For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Adam, and today I'm going to be recording a video that I've wanted to make for a while, and one that hits particularly close to home for me because it's about my dad. And that's a picture of me and my dad there from many years ago. After spending the last few years studying self-development, business and psychology, I've gone through a lot of change, both internally and externally. I've experienced internal shifts, new perspectives and clarity on the new life that I want to build. I've also built a business, and earlier this year I unfortunately suffered the loss of my dad. There were about 4 years leading up to his death where he had been diagnosed with cancer, and me and my family had to come to terms with what was happening and what would eventually take place. Now, I'm telling you all this because throughout that time, I lent heavily on my partner, Kat, my family, and the self-development work that I was doing. Growing this business, learning more about myself, mentally and spiritually, all helped me to process what was happening. And in all honesty, it significantly softened the emotional blow I took when I lost him. I think without this work, I would have been in a lot more of a state than I was when it happened. So if you're facing the loss of a family member, or you also have curiosity, appetite for growth, and simply want to explore more of your potential, then this video is for you. The best way I can describe it is that in the years coming up to Dad's passing, I was able to detach myself or reduce my dependence on my parents. It's not uncommon for us to spend a lot of our lives doing things to earn respect, love, and acceptance for our parents. The connection we have with them is stronger than most other relationships we have, so this makes sense, right? Even when you go into your 30s, 40s, and 50s. I read one book which recommended living your life in alignment with a set of 6 to 8 core values which are unique to you. For example, 3 of mine are authenticity, growth, and self-respect. These are core principles which you hold closer to you more than anything else in the world. Principles that you won't compromise on. And in doing the work to explore these, define them, and then start acting in alignment with them, you remove yourself from being emotionally dependent or heavily reliant on your parents, your partner, your friends, or your children. And it seems weird here that you're replacing family members with words. It sounds insane, but it's not that. It's the meaning behind the words. And you will come to these values by looking into your past, and you'll find that the times where you were the most sad, anxious, or not in a good state was when those values were compromised by either yourself, so either you lied and one of your core values is honesty, or you were lied to, for example. This is a kind of mechanism that I use to figure out what mine are. So basically, as long as I align my life with these things, I'm going to be pretty happy and stable. And this doesn't mean that you don't love the people in your life, right? It just means your emotional state is not tied to elements outside of your control. So for example, if you tie your emotional state to your father, you're emotionally dependent on him. That means that when he's in a bad mood, this affects your mood. You might think, oh, what have I done wrong? Does this mean he doesn't love me or he doesn't like me? And it can shake your self-worth and confidence. When, of course, as incredible as our parents are, they're people. They get pissed off. They have bad days. And these states are very rarely related to us or their feelings about us at all. They're just a fleeting moment. I honestly believe that by shifting my alignment from being dependent on my family, my dad and what he thought of me, to being aligned with these values that I came up with, that I discovered, I was able to avoid feeling absolutely, completely lost and destroyed when Dad passed away. Of course, it was shit, but I focused on my family, developing myself and growing my business, building the future for my family and impacting my clients. And this is something that I inherited from Dad and something that I was proud of. I would best describe Dad as a caretaker. He did everything for us. My parents helped me when buying my first home. They were always there, even when I did stupid shit when I was younger, and they always put me and my sister first. Now my dad isn't here anymore. It only felt right that I step into that caretaker role and make sure that we're all okay. I want to give my son Zach what my mum and dad gave me. The amazing holidays, always being there, and one day helping him to buy his first house. Conversely, I also had a few epiphanies which I didn't even expect. Looking back, I also remembered that my dad mentioned that he could never run a business. It would be too much stress for him, right? And he liked the 9 to 5. And what I took from that was, if dad couldn't run a business, the same guy who works tirelessly with mum to pay for everything, helps us and carries all the bags, how the hell could I run a business, right? If he can't do it, how the hell can I? And dad mentioned that when he was younger, he was trying to get into shape, and he said his physiology made it hard for him to build muscle. He said, I was probably similar. And I took that as, why should I bother working out if I'm always going to be skinny? Now, my point here isn't to paint my dad as a limiting factor in my life. He was the opposite. But more that I took what he said and I turned it into a limiting belief that businesses were too hard for me to build and I was doomed to be skinny forever. Beliefs that dictated my actions, or lack of action, more accurately. They kind of created a little box for me. And even though all of this was possible, I'd built this box, I'd built this cage, so I couldn't go out of it. These beliefs I later found out to be completely false. A quote that I came up with to help me through this was, you can love, respect, and be eternally grateful for your parents while also knowing you are fundamentally different from each other. Or you can love, respect, and be eternally grateful for your parents while also knowing that you might want to live a completely different life from they did and therefore take completely different actions in life. That's absolutely fine. Those two things can coexist with each other. So I'd ask you, how much of your personality, risk tolerance, and financial trajectory is inherited from your father? Now, I don't need to go into the statistics around how important it is for father figures to be present in people's lives and the negative effect in their absence. That's pretty much well understood and documented at this point. The main purpose of this video is to really just explore how much our parents, our fathers in particular, impact how we see ourselves. And even with all the love and good intention in the world, how they can play a part in us developing limiting beliefs about what we're capable of, what is possible, even what we deserve. Now, they don't do it intentionally or maliciously, but our parents' limiting beliefs often transmit to us. We can inherit them. Conversely, we can change them. We can choose to believe something completely different. The truth is that we all have limiting beliefs about ourselves. I hear it all the time from my clients and my friends. I've never been good academically. I'm only good for hands-on work. Or dad couldn't do it and he was incredibly resilient. If he couldn't do it, then how could I ever dream of doing it? That was me. Mum always said to stick to a full-time job as a backup and keep music, art or sport as a hobby. I can't turn them into a career. Or I was so terrible in that relationship that I don't deserve to be treated nicely ever again. These are examples of the kind of things that I hear. And some of those are things that I told myself in the past before I resolved those issues. Some of you might even be able to relate to some of those. And let me tell you that these are not true in any shape or form. They are beliefs that you have, maybe, and by definition, anything we believe to be true from our perspective will, for all intents and purposes, be true. In other words, there are certain things in life which are true because we choose them to be true. We keep believing in them, okay? The key concept here is we choose them as truth. And to quote one of my favorite mentors, the only truth is that which the subconscious mind believes to be true. And that's a bar, write that down. You can see this in extreme examples where millionaires knew that they were going to be millionaires years before they even made a couple of pounds in their bank. Or on the other end of the scale, where extremists believe that their sole purpose is to end their life along with others, I know this is an extreme example, for the promise of an afterlife and good things to happen to them after that. I know it's extreme, but I think it's needed to serve my point, which is that you would look at these examples and think, well, they sound like they've been brainwashed, and you would be correct in that. But I would also invite you to acknowledge that you too have been brainwashed, but to a different and very less extreme degree. We're all brainwashed. We're all programmed by our parents, our teachers, our caregivers, corporate advertisements, media, government mouthpieces. We've all been programmed since birth. That program has instilled expectations, standards, and limits to how much love you can receive or expect to receive, how much money we can likely earn, and how many days off holiday we might have a year. the level of fitness which is acceptable to us. And one way for you to kind of zoom out from your life and see this would be, what kind of wage would you have to earn for your parents or friends to pull a face and say, oh, how much? How much are they paying you? Is it 40k? Is it 60k? 100k? 500k? Well, no, couldn't earn that. Whatever the number is, you've just found the acceptable limit of yearly income within your family or circle. Ding, 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 ding. What if you want to earn more than that? Oh, I can't earn 100 grand a year. That's ridiculous, you might say. Well, the truth is, if you believed you could, if you got clear on what that money could provide you in terms of your family, freedom and security, what that would allow you to do with the remainder of your life and the incredible experiences that you could have, if you set your expectations that it might take 5-10 years to get there, and if you focused, you read the relevant books, you invested in a mentor and a coach, and you did the things that pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, anyone could earn 100 grand per year, believe it or not. The caveat is that you'd have to work hard for it. You'd have to believe it was possible. Okay, so let's get back to our parents and how much impact they have on our lives, even years after they pass. Some people can be plagued with challenges throughout their lives, with issues they cannot seem to shift. These can manifest as deep sadness, anxiety, a feeling of being lost or having a hole in the soul, as I heard once. Not being enough. These can stem from experiences in their childhood, like tense relationships with their parents, absence, or even a loss of parents at an early age. These overwhelming, persistent feelings can cause people to hold back at work, to neglect their health, and to sabotage relationships. They can also cause people to respond by trying to fill that hole with exercise, money, food, or other external things with nothing but temporary relief. They might feel good in the moment and shortly after, but then that emptiness or that feeling just comes back. Now, even though people can experience these things, sometimes they don't know why they feel that way. They don't link it back to unresolved emotions or a lack of love and security or stability during childhood. In fact, it's extremely common for us to run a fucking mile away from the shit that we have up here, the memories, the feelings we have about ourselves. We can be very avoidant, and in this current time in 2025, it's never been easier to become more avoidant. It's never been easier to run away from your problems because there's so much out there. There's endless content on YouTube and Netflix. There's endless advertising and beaming thoughts into our head. You know, social media is a prime example of this. Doom scrolling can overwhelm us and distract us like just to no end. But if you want to really get through this and do the work to stop these feelings, this is where inner child work comes in. So inner child work involves working with a specialist to enter into a theta state of consciousness, or to put it simply, a state of relaxation where you feel pretty chill. You're not asleep, but through controlling your breathing, being in a relaxed environment and being guided by a specialist, you are led through a series of visualizations, or more accurately, like an imagination, a story in your mind, where you meet, say, the 4-year-old version of yourself. Here, you are able to ask them what they are feeling in that moment as your adult self. You are able to separate that part of you and talk to them. You can find out what they're missing, what they didn't get from their parents or caregivers at the time that they needed. You can give them what they need. You can be the parent that you didn't have as a child. This is incredibly deep and moving, powerful work, but it can be uncomfortable, right? And this is why some people don't go down that route. But ultimately, it provides a huge relief and feeling of completeness and resolve to those who go through the journey. And I've actually guided myself through some of these situations. I've met a 14-year-old version of myself because that's when some of my problems started. And then an 18-year-old version of myself as well, because that was another stage of my life where a lot of these things began. But that's probably for another video, right? I don't want to get into that now. Inner child work allows you to provide yourself, or more importantly, the part of you, which is still a young child inside, with the love, security, hope, and stability that it didn't get when it was younger for whatever reason. Okay. People heal this way because they no longer seek anything from anyone else, from their parents, their friends. They want to spend time with them. They want to communicate and have relationships with them, but they don't need as much from them. They realize they have everything they need within themselves, and they can provide it to themselves. They make themselves feel whole. They make themselves feel complete. They become emotionally independent. I would ask if you've ever heard of anything like this before, because the chances are it's more likely that you would have heard of antidepressants than inner child work, which is sad. And to me, at least, it shows that people are often sold the cheap, convenient workaround to our problems rather than being sold the solution, which often lies within rather than something that you can buy that's mass produced and conveniently priced. This is where most of our power lies, okay? However, it's hard to sell someone something that they already have. So we are often made to believe that the solution to our problem lies in the external, in possessions, in pills or whatever. But again, maybe that's a topic for another video. And of course, I am not a doctor, so do not take that as advice on whether to take medication or not. The incredible takeaway that I've had, even just touching the surface of this work, is that we often look for things to add to our lives to improve our well-being. Oh, if only I had that. If only I had money. If only I had that car. If only I was, bigger or whatever. We want to add things to improve our well-being and levels of happiness and fulfillment, and we rarely look at what to remove. On hindsight, for me, using a reductive approach first allows us to remove, correct, address what is not serving us before adding or replacing them with new habits, beliefs, and mental models that do serve us, that set us up for success, that propel us forward. So one thing that you can do, and one thing I teach in my program, is to provide a life audit. And that is essentially that. Look at how you're spending your time, look at how you're spending your energy, your diet, your habits. What are they congruent with? What is the outcome of those? What is the outcome of the life that you want? And then what are the activities, thoughts, habits, mentality and mindset that are congruent with the life that you want? It really is as simple as that, but it's not easy per se. It helps to have guidance. So one thing that we can look at to remove are our limiting beliefs, our cognitive distortions, and our unhelpful opinions or perspectives on things that aren't objectively beneficial to us. They're not serving us. We can choose to replace things that do not serve us with things that do. I apologise if this is all a bit heavy and slightly off-piste from the video, but essentially your parents influence your wealth to such a high degree because they have a multifactored impact, right? If you have wealthy parents, they can fund private education, they can provide network connections to higher paying jobs. They also have access to information which allow them to protect their money from tax, which, you guessed it, costs money. Money that poorer families don't have access to. And at a more abstract level, you inherit your parents' money mindset, their money expectations, their money beliefs. Does this mean you're fucked if you weren't born into a rich family? The answer will surprise you. While you can't magic a trust fund into existence, you can completely reprogram yourself with the mindset of a wealthy person and start creating your own for your child. And to explain this, I'm going to reference the fable of the goose and the egg, the fable of value and value production. If we consider that a farmer has a goose and the value he gets from the goose is the egg can be sold for value for money, but the goose only lays one egg a day. The farmer gets frustrated one day and he tries to squeeze a second egg out the goose to see if he can double his yield, but in doing so he kills the poor goose and subsequently destroys his value production. Bye-bye goose. The goose can no longer lay eggs, and this is what happens when farmland is over-fertilized to squeeze more yield from it. Short-term gain comes with the side effect of long-term damage. If you are not born into a wealthy family, while you can't choose how many eggs your family has, or, money inheritance, you can choose whether you have a goose or not. Make sense? Let me explain. So, if you learn the mindset of the successful and reprogram yourself with beliefs that serve you, this will allow you to earn way more than if you stay with the programming you receive from your parents. It allows you to create value production capability, or a goose, for example. If you are not beholden to the path set out before you by your parents, you can simply choose a different path with drastically different outcomes for your health, wealth, and relationships. So I'd just like to say, if you're still here with me, thanks for sticking with me, and this is going to help you more than you know. So to summarize, my dad gave me so much growing up. Like, his integrity, his loyalty shaped my core values, which were again self-respect, authenticity, discipline, amongst others. And he sacrificed a lot for me. I've retained all of his programming because it serves me so well. I want to do the same and more for my son, Zach. I have, however, chosen to replace the programming I got growing up that didn't serve me. For example, the notion that all rich people are arseholes, that we rely heavily on politicians to improve our quality of life, or that businesses are too hard to grow. I've simply chosen not to believe them because the life that I want is not congruent with these beliefs. I've replaced them with beliefs that being rich doesn't make you an arsehole, it just amplifies who you already are. And if I focus my energy on what I can do for myself and my family rather than what political parties can do for me or whether I like them or not, I will see exponential results and less disappointment. And finally, growing a business will turn me into a better version of myself. It just requires learning, sacrifice, and time. But inevitably, it will allow me to impact many others far more than I do in my 9-to-5 job and live a life that I used to dream of. It's a win-win situation. See, I questioned my rigid belief structure. I realized it was mobile. It was malleable. I could choose my beliefs to suit me and align them to the life that I wanted to live. It's that simple. It's just, I hadn't been told this before. No one in my circle had told me this shit because barely anyone knows it. And that's why most people live very similar lives to each other. We might be relatively happy, but inside, a lot of us are living in a kind of trapped and beholden to our 9-to-5 job, paying the mortgage each month, looking forward kind of to retiring or paying off the mortgage at 65 and 70. At which point we're at the end of our fucking lives. That, to me at least, was the thing that made me constantly feel a bit hopeless and a bit trapped. And now I do not have those feelings anymore. I've never been so fucking hopeful in my life. I've never been so ecstatic, to be honest, on a daily basis, because I've removed that imaginary box that I was in. So brainwash yourself or be brainwashed by someone else. There is no option to opt out of brainwashing, just like not making a decision is making a decision. You are in a corner here. You need to do one or the other. So I'd like to end on another personal note that even though Dad isn't here anymore, he's still in my head. I kind of consult him. I can still hear him responding to current events, like things that happen on the news, things that happen in my family. And being completely honest, this can be good and bad because sometimes he can tell me how proud he is. And sometimes he just makes that face he used to make when he didn't really understand something or agree with something because, he was set in his ways. And that's fine. That's what I prefer, because the important thing for me isn't that he agrees with me or understands. It's that he's still there and he's still unapologetically himself. So I'd like to, of course, dedicate this video to my dad. I'll miss you, mate.